Okay, Jesse Martineau here, host of the French Canadian Legacy podcast. And I'm joined with a group that's going to be very familiar to the listeners of the podcast for sure. And we just all got together to watch what I thought was a pretty amazing documentary film, Le Carrefour, The Intersection. And so we haven't actually, this is going to be an immediate reaction video. We haven't even talked to each other about what we thought about the video yet. So joined, of course, by Mike Campbell, the producer of the podcast and the man behind the already incredibly successful New England Franco Geo Tour, which I have the logo behind me. Daniel Moreau is here. Is interesting to be talking to him. He is from Lewiston, Maine. And so we'll get a chance to talk to him, get his thoughts of what he thought about the film. The film obviously takes place in Lewiston, Maine. He's a senior at the University of Maine. He's behind the incredible project Dawson, which everybody needs to check out. All right. Also with us, of course, we have Melody Desjardins, who's an incredible writer behind the amazing blog Modern Francos. Just terrific writing style that's super entertaining every single time. So it's cool to have her. Also, obviously, does the news for us here on the podcast. And of course, the resident historian of the French Canadian Legacy podcast. He has a book out that we should be hyping about John F. Kennedy, which we can talk about later, I guess, the topic of that book. But he's got another book coming about Franco-American politicians. And he also obviously runs a terrific blog himself, Query the Past. Patrick Lacroix is with us. So we just all got together. We watched this pretty cool documentary. Which done by Jessamine Irwin and Daniel Quintanilla, a couple of guests on the podcast before. That kind of talks about, it follows a couple of people in Lewiston, Maine. One Franco-American who grew up in Lewiston, kind of ran away from her heritage for a while, only to return to it later on in life. And then another gentleman from the Congo who came to Lewiston seeking asylum, actually, and kind of how they connected through their French language, which I thought was super interesting. So, Daniel, I would actually like to start with you, because I think it'd be interesting, because for me, it was pretty wild just to see the kind of the tour of Lewiston that we had through this. And I know it would be crazy if I had this in Manchester. So I was just wondering kind of what your thoughts were as you were seeing your hometown and kind of the way it was portrayed in this film.
Yeah, it's crazy because just about every place I saw, I was familiar with. Even the neighborhood that Cecile was living in, that was right across the street from where my dad grew up. And all of the sites I knew. I grew up with, I could tell where a street was from the Pebble.
Very cool. In this story, is this something you'd been familiar with before this film?
Yeah, I in high school I did a writing piece. I felt that the stories of the Franco-American immigrants and the new immigrants to Lewiston were so similar, and how the recent kind of clashing seems a bit, in my point of view, a little bit hypocritical because there's the same story.
A lot of parallels for sure. So, Melody, what did you think? What was your takeaway from the first time viewing this film?
Well, I was surprised that Cecile Desjardins, I mean, that was my meme's name exactly. So that was pretty interesting. I wasn't expecting that at all, because I didn't look into the movie beyond the trailer at all. I wanted to be surprised by it. So
That's a cool personal connection for sure.
Yeah. When I saw the name Desjardins, I thought, oh, that's cool. And then it showed her name is Cecile. And oh my God, what's my meme's name. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting how these two different communities could connect through language like that. I liked the scenes of when they're in the Franco Center and they're talking about their upbringings, their families. I thought that was really interesting.
Very cool. Patrick, what did you think? I thought it was interesting on what your perspective is kind of how it tried to weave kind of the history, the story of the Franco-Americans just generally into the film.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it does so really effectively. It's a short film. And, as much as I'd like to listen to hours and hours of Franco American history, I love how um, these filmmakers really packed a punch very in a laconic way. They're very efficient at setting up the history in only a few words and providing a lot of space for the story to unfold just by weaving in like a few pieces of, a few newspaper items, a few pieces from the 1920s and the interwar period generally, just to set up the difficult relationship that a lot of Franco-Mainers and Franco-Americans in general have had with their heritage. This kind of paradoxical relationship where they want to renew ties and maintain that relationship to Quebec culture, Acadian culture, while not feeling entirely comfortable with it due to the pressures of American society. And I don't want to overemphasize like the similar experiences between recent immigrants and French Canadians, partly because a lot of these African immigrants are completely unmoored from their homeland. It's not like they can just go back and forth, jump on a train and be back. So their relationship is a lot more difficult, and they probably feel the pressure to fit and to find community all the more, maybe more so than French Canadians. But it's great that there are people like Cecile who are there to welcome them in their own language. So it's very, at the same time, difficult to hear from a historical perspective, but also inspiring.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned how the film kind of highlighted the kind of complicated relationship lots of Franco-Americans have kind of with their heritage. And there's a scene that definitely got to me where Cecile was talking to another woman, and this other woman refers to a conversation she had with the kids, and they asked her why they were not taught French. And I think somebody started cutting some onions in my apartments around the time that happened, because that rang true for sure for me in kind of my situation. Mike, you know more about film than anybody else I know. So what did you think?
I loved it. I really enjoyed it. So just a little bit of, depending on when you're watching this, it's premiering in person Sunday, that September 19th at the Camden International Film Festival. And that's how we were all able to watch it. You can also watch it virtually. So you can buy a ticket. It's part of a 6-part. There's also 5 other short films included. And I believe it was $15. So depending when you're watching, we'll flash the link right now in the video, and it'll also be in the description. So you can watch this. It was only 32 minutes, but like you said, it packed a punch. They got right to it. You felt like you knew these people in just this half an hour you spent with them. And it's like you were talking about Cecile connecting back to her roots. Melody was talking about the surname connecting with my mom's name is Cecile. So there was instant connection right there too. Yeah, I cannot recommend this enough. If you're able to grab this right when you watch this video, I cannot recommend watching it enough. And also self-plug here, we were lucky enough to have the filmmakers on 2 weeks ago on episode 68 of the podcast, and they gave some great behind the scenes stories. As we were watching this, I was like, oh yeah, they were talking about this. They talked about how this happened, and so you can learn about the whole backstory of how this project came to be, and watch this amazing film.
And one thing I definitely want to point out, obviously this is a Lewiston story, but this is going to be a story that is going to be very familiar to Franco-Americans, I'm guessing all across the Northeast, certainly in New England for sure, because a lot of the conversations that they were mentioning between families are conversations that I've certainly had with mine. And some of the stories that they were telling in this movie were definitely stories that were told to me. So obviously it's a Lewiston story, but I'm thinking if you grew up in Biddeford, Manchester, Lowell, Woonsocket, or any of the other tons of places that were Franco-Americans and the Franco-American heritage. I think you're going to recognize quite a few themes in this film and kind of see that intersection now, and see how all that is playing out in Lewiston as we see these new immigrants coming in from different African countries, not just the Congo, but a number of French-speaking African countries. So really, really interesting. Anybody else? Is something you want to add?
I'll just pitch their website too.
Please.
lecarrefourfilm.com. We'll flash it down below and we'll have links in the description. You can still help support the film. There's still fundraising because they're going to try to hit more film festivals, get a wider release. But like I said, if you happen to be watching this right away, the weekend of the 19th, I believe you can still order it up till Sunday night or Monday night. Don't quote me on that. And then once you start it, you have 72 hours to watch it. And like I said, it's only 32 minutes, but I'm excited to watch the other films that were included on it. I love movies. So.
Absolutely. Support the project. Definitely an important project. It's available whether you speak French or English. Definitely options on either one of those. Super, super interesting film. Different take on a story that we've heard quite a bit about on the podcast. So I consider, again, I think it's an awesome story, something that has to be told, and I love the way that they were able to present it. So if you can support the film, please do so. We have at the podcast, so definitely hope that everybody else joins us because it's a great project. Anything else?
Thanks everyone for agreeing to get together after watching.
Yeah, I appreciate it, everybody. Yeah, just kind of a spur of the moment. Man, let's get together and see what everybody thought. So thank you very much, guys. Definitely appreciate it.
Mhm.